Hi, you guys. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what to do next. Okay, so you finished turning in your oratory outline, your informative outline. And so now we're going to talk about what that next step is going to be. Okay, so we are going to start to begin to write that speech. Okay, you're going to start right from the beginning of that oratory outline. You're going to begin writing that speech. And what you're going to do is you're going to write that attention getter, which is basically expanding your metaphor, being descriptive, pulling us in, talking to us about that metaphor, and then somehow figure out a way to be able to take that metaphor and shift it towards the actual topic of your speech. Okay? After you have done that, you are then going to use that metaphor in stating the 3 points. So, for example, what you could do is you could talk about, when you were little, you loved to walk along the beach. And it was one of your most favorite vacations ever, was to go to the beach and be able to make sand castles and play in the ocean and, take a look at all of the different animals that grow and live in the sand and in the water, in the shallow water. And one of the things that you also looked forward to was being able to see where the sea turtles had come out, and so and had buried their eggs. And so the biggest thing that was really scary was the fact that you suddenly realized that sea turtles were becoming an endangered species. And so today we're going to take our sand pail and we're going to walk on down to the beach, and we're going to talk about first how sea turtles have become extinct. Second, we're going to start to dig in the sand and to take a big deep breath of that sea air and talk a little bit about, and then you would state point 2. And then lastly, we're going to build that sand castle on the beach, and we're going to talk about how we can build a better understanding of how to save the sea turtles. You see what I did? So the speech is about sea turtles, but your metaphor is going to the beach, and it is going to, and how you build a sandcastle starting from the ground up. Okay. That's how you do it in regards to that opening sequence. Okay. Then you're going to expand that metaphor. You notice how I used the metaphor transitionally in that opening sequence to mildly state how I was going to use the metaphor into the points. As you get into the body of this writing of the speech, you're going to develop that metaphor even more. So the first point was that you were going to grab your bucket and you were going to walk down to the beach. So what you would do is you would start to talk about the fact that, maybe you lived near the beach and your favorite time was when summer hit and you could grab your bucket and go down, walking down this really long winding path that led you out into the warm sand of the beach area. And you take your bucket and you're going to sit down in the sand and kind of just relax and just feel the sand under your feet and under your body. And you're going to take that bucket and just kind of sit there for just a little bit. And so in regard, and then as you do that, you see how I've expanded that even farther out? And then you have to figure out how to tie it into that first point of talking about why the sea turtles became extinct. Okay. What processes led us to getting to that point where the sea turtles are extinct? Okay. You're going to do the same thing for the metaphor into point 2, and you're going to do the same thing for the metaphor into point 3. Now, the question is, why? Okay. In the grand scheme of things, when you are performing live, you are doing your movement, which was called platforming, and you need metaphor to be able to fill that transition time from the beginning point to point 1. So by the time that you arrive at point 1, you are stating point 1. So this area right here has to be written into your speech, which is where the metaphor comes in. So you're going to write that transition and arrive at point 1. Then you're going to use the metaphor again, and you're going to arrive at point 2. Okay. You're going to use the metaphors as you've stated it in that opening sequence. And then as you're writing in the body, you're expanding out that metaphor a little bit more. Okay. In point 1, point 2, and then point 3, you're just going to need to make sure that all of that supplemental source material that you wrote on the oratory outline or the informative outline is in your own words. Get more if you need to, and then make sure that whatever cited source material you have cited is printed in your speech in that paragraph somewhere verbatim, okay? When you get to the reverse roadmap at the end, I don't want you to state the metaphor ever again. That's at the end of the speech because you've already expanded it and you've reminded us twice of the metaphor that you're there, okay? So when you get to the reverse roadmap, what you're going to do is, so today we talked about how sea turtles have become extinct. And we've talked about point number 2, and we then finally discussed point number 3. And then what you're going to do is you're going to then write out what is called the conclusion, which is then book ending it. So you led by talking about going to the beach and building a sandcastle. You're going to want to end the speech with how to build a sandcastle and how it's different now that you realize that there are things happening in this world that are not necessarily good for our environment. Okay? Now, that's called the book ending. So you're going to want to write your book ending. What you're also going to want to do is make sure that by the end of the first paragraph, somewhere towards the end, you actually state the title that you have created for your oratory or informative. One of the things that we are noticing on the national level is that in the book ending, at the end, they're ending with the title as well. If you can do it that way, that would be amazing, okay? Right now, what I would say is as you are writing this speech, don't focus on time limit, okay? Write everything out. Once you have written the entire speech, then you are going to start to time it and you're going to read it out loud at a fair tempo, okay? If you are over the 10-minute and 30-second grace period, you'll need to start cutting, okay? What you're going to do is you're going to cut the extraneous stuff first. Anything that's like added that you're like, oh, I already kind of say this in regards to the cited sources, or if there's any extra stuff, or if you feel like maybe you get a little bit too wordy and verbally in regards to describing stuff, then cut some of that out, okay? Make sure that the stuff that you keep is important, all right? Now, just as a reminder, remember that oratory, your argument has to use evidence and logic and emotional appeal. It's got to be persuasive in nature. Humor can definitely be and probably should be pulled in somehow to oratory, but don't force it because it just feels forced, okay? The thing that we did find with NSDA is that extensive paraphrasing from other sources is prohibited. However, you can cite 150 directly quoted words, okay? Now, you can use research to be able to help build your own thoughts in regards to how you are writing that suggested material and all of the stuff that you don't quote from in regards to the outline, okay? Yes, we are now moving into the phrase that once the speech is memorized, or once the speech is written, it is then going to have to be memorized, okay? And you're going to see the deadlines at the end of this PowerPoint. You cannot use a script. You have to have it memorized, okay? In regards to oratory, no visuals are permitted, and your time limit is 10 minutes with a 30-second grace period. Now, as you start to read out loud and time that first running, if it is shorter than, say, 9.5 minutes, if it's way short, you got more work to do, okay? It has to be between 9.5 and 10 minutes because you have a 30-second grace period in there, and then you cannot go over that 30-second, okay? We do suggest movement in regards to platforming this year. However, maybe it's just a matter of sitting in front of the camera this year and just working on delivery. All right. In informative, Everything is pretty much the same in regards to that. It's just that you will now have visual aids. And I do talk a little bit about what visual aid requirements are. They are permitted. We do require them here at Bentonville High School because it sets us apart. All right. It is not simply an essay about a topic. It is well researched, organized, and listen, that outline is set for organization. Okay. You're going to blatantly state each main point in the body. All right. Movement is optional, but of course we prefer it. And then there's the 10-minute with a 30-second grace period. And everything that I said about oratory in regards to time is also for informative. Okay. So if you are short, you will be expected to add in more. All right. Some notes about your visuals. Visuals are a must for us here at Bentonville. All right. They have got to be professional in appearance and very creative. Do not put anything hand-drawn, handwritten, any of that kind of stuff. Computer-generated is preferred and large enough for the audience to actually be able to see. It has to hold the audience attention, grabbing them both visually as well as the way that you have written it. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Do not overload your visuals to the point where they're messy, and don't overload them with words that have to be read. Okay, make them very interactive. All right. The thing that you could possibly do is use your metaphor as a through line theme for your visuals. So, in regards to the sandcastle idea, I could possibly get dark blue poster board and build the first one to look like a beach sequence with a sandcastle built on it. Okay. Then as I move into my first point, I would flip the visual and maybe it's a blue panel with just the sand across the bottom and all of your information about sea turtles and how they've become extinct. Okay. Then I would flip to the next one on my second paragraph in the main body, my second point. And what I would do is I would have the sand on a blue panel and then maybe a little bit of a buildup of a sand castle there. Okay. And then building in whatever the third point or the second point is in regards to what that material is. Yeah. Then the third point, sand, fully built sand castle, and then all of the information stuff that you would want to include on that third point. And then maybe there's a conclusion. So you minimum of 4 to 5 panels that you would need to have. Okay. The visuals are there meant to be visuals. Okay. They are not meant to be wordy. They're not meant to be busy. They're not meant to be huge. Don't make them huge. Do not copycat what else is out there. Your visuals can have keywords and images that you will use to structure your speech. Some people use Velcro to attach pictures to make them interactive. We prefer magnets if you can, because the magnets are a little bit easier to navigate. They help also to indicate when you are transitioning, and when you switch slides, like I've given you the examples, you can see that it reinforces the transitions between point 1 to point 2, and you're using that metaphor to be able to transition between point 1 to point 2, and then you're flipping the slide as you are using that metaphor. Okay? Tips for presenting. Make sure that all of your visual aids are ready to go and that they are all in place. A visual aid is not a purpose in itself. You got to integrate them smartly within your speech and really think about how you are going to use those. As you are getting ready to run this, you need to make sure that you're practicing it several times. You will not be able to have, as it says here, I didn't notice this, NSDA does not allow electrical components, okay? So you will not be allowed to have anything flashing or electrical or anything like that on there. You need to make sure, though, that you can constantly check to make sure that people can read what your slide actually says or see what your slide actually says, okay? And then be able to, I'm trying to wait to see what that says here. It must not be important. Okay. Okay. Memorization. So many different ways to be able to memorize this. Remember that first and foremost, you have written this. You have been with this material for weeks. You have written it. So you just need to remember the way that that outline is set up, okay? You're going to do the attention getter first. You're going to do the roadmap. You're going to use the metaphor to be able to describe each point, okay? Then you're going to expand that metaphor and lead into point number one. And then you're going to provide all of that material. Do you see what's happening? So you remember the structure of the way that outline is set up, the way that it's organized. So you're going to write out the speech. And then what you're going to do is you're going to want to start to say your speech out loud with the script, okay? If you need to move, do it, okay? If movement helps you to remember stuff, do it, okay? The biggest thing to remember is to say it out loud. Do not sit there with a piece of paper and be like, it won't help. Okay, it will not help. There is something about saying it out loud and your ears hearing it and your brain collecting it. And for me, as I do memorization, I tie movement to each line as I'm memorizing them from a script. Okay, and the movement, if I can't put the piece of paper down and then say the word with the movement, then I need to go back in and repetitiously say it over and over and over and over and over until I can put the page down, say it out loud, and then attach the movement to it. Okay, you might want to use number 3, memorize the big chunks first. Okay, chunking it out, and then adding in the small transitional stuff later, okay? Right now, I'm expecting to hear you memorize this speech verbatim, meaning word for word, don't paraphrase, all right? You will be graded in regards to memorization and all of that kind of stuff. So be very, very careful that you're memorizing it word for word, okay? What I would also say is that you could do it in what I call a chunk it out kind of a way, where you're going to take the speech and you're just going to memorize the attention getter first, chunk number 1. You're going to say it out loud numerous times, over and over and over, reading it off the page, reading chunk number 1 off the page, reading chunk number 1 off the page. And then I'm going to put it down and I'm going to try to tell it out loud, chunk number 1 off the page, okay? If you do not get it verbatim, pick up the page again and read chunk number 1 off the page, chunk number 1 off the page, chunk number 1 off the page, then put the page down and try to do it verbatim, okay? If you're struggling with this, the chunk could be too big, so make it smaller, make it more accessible. This is not going to be one of those things you're going to be able to do the night before, all right? You're going to need to spend some time on this. So making sure that you've got it chunked out. And then what I would do is once you have chunk number 1 fully done verbatim, then move on to chunk number 2. Chunk number 2, say it out loud. Chunk number 2, say it out loud. Chunk number 2, say it out loud. Put the paper down. Try to do chunk number 1 or chunk number 2 verbatim. Okay. Then put chunk number 1 and 2 together and try to do that. All right. If you have trouble with chunk number 1, go back to chunk number 1 again. And then try to add chunk number 2, okay? This is going to take a little bit of time, but that's how I memorize. I memorize by chunking it out, okay? The other thing that you can do too is tape record yourself saying the speech and then playing it in earbuds all the time, playing it in your car, playing it before you go to bed, playing it, in class, so that you're listening to the speech all the time. And that could possibly also help you when you get to this chunking it out section. Okay. Now, there will be areas where you might have some issues. Like maybe it's just a sentence, like to a small point. So then what you can do is you can run the sentence before, the trouble sentence, and the sentence after, and just run that over and over, run that over and over, run that over and over, and then try to put the page down and just run all 3 sentences together. And then chunk 1, chunk 2, with that crazy sentence, the crazy trouble spot. Okay. Delivery, sometimes how you inflect it helps. Sometimes if you've written it this way, articulation and certain onomatopoeia words, like it would be good, okay, to build into the way that you write it, because it's creative and it might be very easy to memorize it that way. Movement does help also. For us, it's the diamond pattern for oratory, and it's back. It's starting here and then moving over here and then to here and then to here and then back, and then your call to action, you're pushing forward. Okay, that's the diamond pattern. Now, for informative, it's back and forth because you're interacting with your visuals. Okay, platforming and movement for each chunk might be beneficial. Okay, this is the chunking it out section. The key is to not say it in your head. You have to speak it out loud, folks, so that you can get where you need to go somewhere where you're not going to feel awkward doing so. All right. If you're worried that your parents are going to hear it, or you're worried, you're feeling awkward, that you're like, I'd be embarrassed if they caught me. You need to find a spot where you can do this. Okay. You've got to make sure that you're get out of that zone. You've got to memorize this thing and say it in your head. Also, writing it could also over and over and over, just handwriting your speech can help you as well. There are so many ways that you can memorize speeches. Okay. You just have to put in the time and figure out which works for you. There's visual ways, there's auditory ways, there is written ways, there's numerous ways to be able to memorize these speeches. Okay. So October 9th, not this Friday, but next Friday, your entire speech needs to be written out and submitted to me. And it will need to be printed out in the format of your oratory outline, okay, or your informative outline. Now listen, you guys have just submitted these outlines today for the grade. The speech may change some of the things in your outline. That is okay, okay? This outline will be turned in at the end of the semester for your portfolio, and that's where I'm going to be looking for the final outline, okay? So I just make sure that the speech is organized and written in the format of the outline so that it is organized to the way the outline is set up, okay? Then you are going to memorize your speech, okay? In-class prep presentations will begin October 14th for mentors, peers, and my evaluations, and it will be worth 150 points. So 250 points are coming here in the next couple of weeks, okay? If you are at home virtually, you will need to submit a video presentation for grade of your speech by October 14th, okay? So make sure that you are staying on top of this. Now, are visual aids due at this point? Yes. These speeches must be ready to present October 14th for feedback and for grade, okay? So tournament ready. So you've got a lot of groundwork that needs to happen, especially if you're an informative, okay? You've got a lot of groundwork to be able to get yourself situated. So please make sure that you are staying on top of this, okay? It's super, super important. So that by the 14th, we will be doing what's called master classing, and you will be expected, unbeknownst to you, to be ready for presenting your speech in class, memorized, okay? You'll wear your mask to do that, and you will present for the class, okay? Now, if you have trouble memorizing and would like to, or if nerves are an issue and you want to submit a video instead, you can do that, all right? But it has to be in by the 14th of October, okay? So I will obviously answer a lot of the questions that you might have. There's also plenty of informative videos where you can see the different styles of visuals that they're using and creating. Those are always a jumping off spot. So just jump in, okay? You've got a lot of points coming up, and so we've spent a lot of time on outline. Speech shouldn't be that hard to take it to the next level, okay? And you will have classroom time in order to be able to do that, but it is due on October 9th, okay, by midnight. Okay, Thank you. You guys are rock stars, and I'm very proud of you. And I'm super excited about all of your guys' topics. So just keep going. All right. Keep plugging through. I'm proud of you. Bye.